Hey, this is a 3D Max tutorial on how to model a non-organic object. This is beginner level basic poly modeling. So our goal is we are going to try to model this lamp on the side here. So let's take a look at the shapes. There's a cylinder at the top here. It's got a beveled inset and a light. It looks like there's a projector in there. Swivels with connective bolts here, and a cylinder at the bottom. So the first thing I'm going to do is make the cylinder base. Let's go into 3D Max. I like to work in 2 views, not 4 views, so I'm going to right click on this plus here. I'm going to go to Configure Viewports, and I'm going to go to Layout, and I'm going to hit 2. You can choose which ones you want, or you can just navigate yourself. That's my preferred method. This maximize viewport toggle will make one of them larger if you want that. And to navigate around, you hold down Alt and press middle mouse button to rotate. You hold down only middle mouse button to pan, and then you scrub middle mouse button to zoom. So all navigation features relate directly to middle mouse button. There's a little thing down at the corner here. It's all the way to the bottom and second from the right. It's called Orbit Sub-Object. That toggle will change what the center point is of what you're rotating around, and I like to have it selected to the middle one there. And what that does is if we have an object in the scene, it'll rotate around the center of that selected object. If we don't have it selected, it'll rotate over an arbitrary center selection point in space. Window crossing, so right here I was trying to select assuming that it was set to this mode. If this box is on the corner here, then anything touching the corner will be selected. If the box is on the inside, then everything inside will be selected. So if you had multiple objects in here and you only wanted to select that one and you had this mode, then you do that and only that one is selected. If it's on the edge, they're all selected. So let's delete that and take a look at our concept art. We're going to first make half of a cylinder. So for this tutorial, we're going to stick mostly with the Create tab and the Modify tab. That's these two over here. And this is just going to be standard geometry. So this is going to be geometry. And then this we're going to stick to standard primitives. I'm going to go to Cylinder, and I held down middle mouse button to pan, and it also makes the left viewport selected. And I'm going to hit L for left viewport. And I'm going to drag up. It's drag, let go of mouse, drag again, let go of mouse. The first one sets the radius and the second drag sets the length. Let's go to our Modify tab. And I have inches or feet in inches selected. So you set that by going to Customize, Unit Setup, hitting US Standard, and hitting feet with decimal inches. So let's just set this to standard world size for the sake of it. If I were making a lamp, I would say maybe, 5 inches across, and then 3/4 of a foot, so 0.75. We'll bring this down to 9 inches. Maybe 3-inch radius. Okay. And a foot. So now the radius and the height obviously affect those. I'm going to move this so it's centered, and under hierarchy I'm going to say affect pivot only and hit center to object. That's not necessary, but it'll put the rotational center into the center of the object. deselect Effect Pivot Only, and let's go back to our Modify tab. For height segments, you can kind of do whatever you want, but I'm going to roll this down to 1. Under this wireframe, I'm going to put it to realistic and edged faces so that it makes a little bit more sense. That looks like a good amount of divots, so I'm going to leave it at 18. Now, right now this is a cylinder object, so under Modify tab, we're going to right click on cylinder and say Convert to Editable Poly. I'm going to go to, so if none of these are selected, then the context for everything we do will be on the object. If any of these are selected, then the context will be whatever that sub-object is. Vertices, edges, borders, polygons, and elements. We want polygons, so I'm going to select these 2 ends. And remember, this is our left viewport. I'm going to go to Quick Slice. Where's that? I'm so used to my hotkeys. Quick Slice. So it's down here under Edit Geometry, or we can right click and it should be under here too. Okay, so if you hold down Control and right click, then Quick Slice. Now I'm going to go up and turn on my Snaps toggle. I'm going to right click on my Snaps toggle and I'm going to make sure Vertex and Midpoint are selected. And I'm going to just click on the center one and the other center one, right click to end my Quick Slice. Make sure Window Crossing has this on the edge, and then I'm going to marquee drag under that slice I just made and hit delete. If you want to be finicky, you can right click on Select and Move, and then you can alter where you want the object to be in space. Now with all of these sliders, see I'm moving it around on the right there, or I could type in I wanted a foot to the right. With everything that's a slider like this, if you right click on the slider, it'll reset it to 0. So I just right clicked on all of these. Now if we look at the bottom of this, you can see that that's an empty object. So I'm going to go to Edge and I'm going to hold down Shift and drag our Y-axis, and then because Snaps is on, it's snapping over there. So I had to hold down Shift in order to create that new polygon. Now let's turn off Snaps. This does not mean that this is welded together. So if I drag it down, it's still an open face. So I also need to go to Vertices and select, and if you look at, you can just hit weld, that'll work fine, but if you click on this little dialog box, oh, why is it saying 20? That's weird. Well, it should say 4 and after 2. I don't know why it's saying that, but whatever. So we just welded it, so now if I grab the edge and I drag it down, it's all one continuous object. Let's go back and look at this image. Now there's going to be a little box there, so Alt-tabbing back over to here. I hit front to change my perspective to front view, took off the edge. I went back to create, geometry, select a box, and I'm going to drag here and drag out and click to end that, and then right click to end my edit on that. And I'm going to go to Modify, and I'm going to decide how big I want this thing to be. That's about right, so I'm going to say 1.5 inches for all of these categories so that it's equal. And I'm going to go to our hierarchy Effect Pivot Only, Center to Object, unclick Effect Pivot Only, go back to Modify. Now when I go to my Snaps toggle and I grab my Y-axis and I snap it to the center point, it'll jump to the center of this. And if I grab it in the X-axis and I snap to center, then it'll also be aligned there. So let's jump back. Now you can see that there are cylinders along here. So you could poly model out the existing geometry so that they were shaped like cylinders, but there's not really enough geometry here to do that. And since we're just making 3D models for reference art and they don't need to be legitimate necessarily, we're just going to go under our Create and then go to Cylinder, and then we're going to create a cylinder about the size of our box. If you want to be technical about it, we know exactly the radius of our box. It was 1.5. Half that because we're dealing with radius, 0.75 inch. Again, let's snap it into view so that it's right. So I grabbed my X-axis and I snapped to the center of my box, and I grab my Y-axis and I snap to the top of that object. Control over. Now we want to smooth that out, so let's go to our front view by hitting F, and if I want my height to go the other direction, so I'm going to put it in the negative axis. I'm going to grab my X and I'm going to drag it to the edge here. Now if we look at this, it looks like there's a little lip and then it bevels down. So let's add some height segments. Well, I'd say 3, and then bring this down. Oh, let's play with that. Probably 12 would be all right. Right click and Editable Poly. And now we're going to take our edge and we're going to select that one. We're going to undo snaps and we're going to bring it a little bit closer. I'm going to grab the next one out and then move so I can see this in space. And I'm going to scale down and then grab the next one out, scale down again. This looks like it's on more of a Bezier curve, so I'm going to bring it down a little bit, scale this down a little bit more, bring it down, and then this is a pretty sharp, jagged edge, and it looks like it's more of a cone, whereas this is a flatter curve. So I'm going to grab only the Y-axis and scale it up a little bit here. Grab that second thing there and scale this up a little bit too. And this is jagged and I don't want that, so I'm going to grab this one center thing and hit Control, right click, chamfer, and I'm going to add a little bit of extra mesh in there, and that'll smooth it out. I'm also going to grab this edge and add a tiny lip, and that'll make it less jagged. And this is still not enough of a curve of what I want. So you can either marquee Control Select, or you could just grab one edge and hit Loop, and it'll make a loop in the circular motion. We're going to scale down, and now we've got a curve here. I don't want to model this twice, so what I'm going to do, it should be a little bit taller, I think. So dragging up in the X-axis. So now I'm going to go to Hierarchy, Effect Pivot Only, and this is a little trick. If you click this button up here, Align, you can click where you want the pivot to be. I clicked on this box and it'll center it to the position because I've got XYZ selected. Hit OK. And now the center of this object is the center of the scene. I'm going to uncheck Effect Pivot Only. I'm going to go to Modify, and now I'm going to add a layer to our Modify stack. So I'm going to hit Modifier List, which is where we get all of our stack extra info from, and I'm going to hit M. It'll jump down a mirror. So that's what I want, mirror. And then it's in our, you see how the arrows are pointing this way. You just go until you find the right axis. So in this case it's our Z, and it'll copy it over to the other side, and I'm going to hit Copy, and now we've got one on each side. So if the reason our affecting center pivot was important there is if we go to our hierarchy and we say affect pivot only, and we move that pivot around, say we deleted it and added a mirror back, Z copy, now it's going to mirror it wherever the center point there was. And likewise, if we wanted to edit how far the mirror center was, we just take this plus mark and we select it, and then it allows us our sub-object of that, and then we can just move the mirror point over. Control Z to go back, deselect that, and wrap it up. Just like we beveled the edges of that, these edges look kind of hard to me, so I would probably go in and select the edges of both of them, Control, chamfer, and just put a little bit of an edge curve there. Unselect edge, and then do the same thing for our box. So I'm going to right click, Editable Poly, grab our edge, select all, Control, right click, chamfer, and then just put like the tiniest little notch on there so it doesn't look so sharp. So now when we go over there, that looks a lot better to me than the rough edges. Let's go back to our concept art. And it looks to me here like we've got two metal lines connected by things that look like wrenches almost. So let's make that. There's a couple ways we could go about that. I'll go into NURBS modeling. So let's go into our left viewpoint, and we're going to hit create, and up till now we've stuck with geometry. So let's go over here to shapes. Now shapes is going to be mostly lines. So if I click here, I click on the ending, it'll close it. This is a line in our left viewport, so it'll stay a line in 3D space. So if we go to our Modify tab, we uncover Rendering, and we click on Enable and Render and Enable and Viewport, then suddenly this will become a visible 3D object. We can choose to have it be radial or rectangular, and then we can edit the properties of it. Similarly, if we go back to our Create, and again we're under Shapes, and we have Spline selected, we can make all sorts of line shapes in this way. There's a rectangle, that's a circle, an ellipse. You can make text. Set our size, 1 foot high of I am a butt. I am a professional butt. So let's take our line and just to make it even, let's go up here, right click, and let's look at the art real quick. So that looks like about that. So let's try to emulate the art as best we can. This is our left viewport right here, so we'll make that about that wide and then make this pretty small. And then I'll bring this out here. And remember our pivot point. I'm going to take the line and bring it to the center here. So I'm going to select our box. It's getting in the way visually, so I'm going to right click and say hide selection. This one is getting in the way visually too, so right click, hide selection. I'm going to select our line, and under this drop-down menu, you can select your points, or you can select your points down here. So I'm going to select our vertices, and I'm going to snap it to the top of this object, and then I'm going to go to Hierarchy, Effect Pivot Only, grab the Y-axis and snap it to the top of the object too. I'm going to take off snaps. I'm going to right click and say Unhide All, and then I'm going to rotate it and right click, or I'm sorry, shift click, drag it over. So now we've got two. I'm going to select both of them and then drag them up here, and then the center point for both of them should be at the base there. I don't know why it's, let's just hit Effect Pivot Only and it'll reset. So now we can rotate it till it's back here. So now let's go over to our concept art, and it looks like there's a little wrench connection there. So I'm going to make a circle. So this is also a spline. It's the same line that we were dealing with before. I'm going to go to the Modify tab, make it a little bit thicker, and bring the width down, and then I'm going to make the radius bigger. So take that up a little bit. I'm going to take the circle and then these top two lines and separate them out. Mess with this a little bit. If I want less lines there, I can go into interpolation and lower that. That'll give me less geometry. Let's leave it about there. Go to our front viewport and then turn on our snaps. X, drag over here. So now we've got copies. And I also want a little cylinder connection in there. So I'm going to go to Geometry, select Cylinder, turn off snaps, go to left viewport, and just create one in here. Let's turn on snaps, drag it over here. It's going to snap to our line because this isn't an object, it's just a line, so I'm going to bring it out a little bit and then adjust the height until it fits. I hit F to go to front view, and now I'm hitting Control V to zoom in. So drag this over, make this a little bit taller. So now we've got this connection joint right in here. I'm going to Control Tab over out here, and it looks like we've got another box similar. So I'm just going to drag that box up. So let's select that, left viewport, holding down Shift, dragging up. So that's copied over. Move this forward. And it looks like there's also knobs there. So let's go to our Create. Make sure you've got geometry selected, not shapes. Go to Cylinder. And one interesting thing is if you check Auto Grid, then you'll draw on top of existing geometry. So if I draw here, oh, that didn't work. Let's try that again. If I draw here, then it'll draw on top of my grid. So I'm going to turn on snaps and snap this to the top of my line there. Actually, I want it to be centered, so I'm going to, okay, so here's an interesting thing. I'm going to look at this from side view. Remember that align tool. So now I've got my knob selected. I'm going to hit align. I'm going to align it, but here you can see our X, Y, and Z axes. I only want it to align in the Y and the Z. So I'm going to uncheck X, and then that'll center it to this object, but only in those axes. Hit OK. Let's look at that. The knob doesn't look like it needs too much detail, so I'm going to leave it at 12. Right-click on that so it goes down to minimum segments. Right-click and turn it Editable Poly. Click Edge, and just hit 1 and say Loop. Oh, that didn't work. Okay, so let's go to Front Viewport. Sometimes Loop doesn't always work. And just marquee drag across so I get all of those at once. Now I'm going to Control, right-click, chamfer to give it a little bit of an edge. I'm going to make this guy's center mirror point the same as this cube. So I'm going to go to Hierarchy, Effect Pivot Only, and I'm going to align it to the box. And I'm going to turn X back on so that it does jump to the center there. OK. Turn off Effect Pivot Only, and then I'm going to turn on Mirror. I'm going to turn it on Z, and I'm going to turn Copy on. So now we've got two knobs. Deselect. So now let's go back out here, and it looks like we've got I think the best way to get this shape would be to make a box and then to chamfer the edges. So let's go to Create. We'll make a box. We'll go to Top-Down View, which is T. I'm going to take Auto Grid off. You can tell that Auto Grid is on because there's this is called a gyro. It's the XYZ button. It's following the mouse, and if you move over objects, it'll change its orientation. That's telling me what orientation my new object would be created at. So I'm going to turn that off, and then now that's off, I just have a mouse button. Let's look how big this is. So this looks like it's the same size as the base. So let's make it about that size. I'm going to drag it up. And then in the left viewport, drag this guy up. I'm going to turn on our snaps and just grab our Y coordinate and snap it to the top of that. Turn off snaps. Let's go, it looks like it's forward a little bit on that knob. So let's bring it forward a bit. It just, to me, industrial design wise, I don't know, that might need a little bit of a counterbalance, so I'm going to make it a little bit wider. Connect up there. I don't think this looks as wide in the drawing, so I'll bring it down a little bit. So now we're looking at the difference between this and this. So obviously it's rounded around here like a sphere, but not perfectly. So I'm going to right click on Box, Editable Poly, I'm going to click Edge, I'm going to grab one of them, and I'm going to click on Ring. That'll select all the edges around in a circle, as opposed to Loop, which would select a continuous circle. The other way that I could do that is just dragging the marquee with the box on the edge, and that would just select everything my marquee is touching. So now I'm going to hold down Control, right click, chamfer, and I'm going to set this to front viewport so I can watch what's happening. And that looks like it's about the shape that I want. So I'm going to let go. I'm going to do it again so it'll smooth out. So now that looks even. Let's go back here. This looks like there's a little bit of maybe a curve to the top. So I'm going to go to my left viewport, select my polygons, select everything in there, and then Control right click. I'm going to grab Quick Slice, and I'm just gonna drag it up. Ugh. There we go. Now I'm going to grab my polys, bring them up a little bit, scale them up, and then that looks like it's also smooth, so I'm just going to grab my edges, Control, right-click, chamfer, and just smooth that out a little bit. Maybe grab these and bring them up a tiny bit too. And also we're going to smooth out the back with Control, right-click, chamfer. We do it twice so it's nice and like really smooth. So that's what that looks like. Control V to center, grab the top, move over. Now it looks like there's a little lip there, so let's grab our face, and the function we want for this is called Inset. So it's right here, or it's also Control right click. It's probably going to be in here as well. There it is. So I'm just gonna, all that's doing is scaling down the polygon perfectly. So scaling it in relation to itself as opposed to scaling it with this wonky thing. And it's also on a polygon level. Now we want to extrude it. So extrude is right here. It's also under Control right click, extrude, and that pushes it backwards inside. So that makes a little edge. There's ways to model these light things in there, but honestly, if you're just doing it for sketching reference, let's go to our front viewport and let's grab a cylinder, turn on auto grid, make our little camera guy. I'm going to go under modify, right click cylinder, editable poly, grab our polygon, our front face, scale it down, go to edge, select, so left, chamfer that, go to edge, select this one. Well, let's leave it. What I was about to do is kind of silly advanced. We don't need to do that. Let's drag, hold down Shift and drag another one over. Let go. And then move it up in space and scale it down by hitting R, which is also this button, and only scaling it in the Z and the X. So if you put your mouse between those two, then this bit'll light up here. Scale it there. Maybe bring it out a little bit here. And it looks like there's also a box right there. So let's go to Create, Box. We've got Auto Grid on, so it'll make the box alongside our new shape. Drag it out, drag it out. So we'll just need a tiny little box. I'm going to select all so we can see our edged faces and compare. Okay, so lastly, I might want to move this around to different positions so that I can take reference pictures of it. So basically, we want this to mechanically work like it would in the real world. So what we're going to want to do is put these objects into groups. It might help if you name them. You name them by, so grabbing cylinder, I might rename it base. This guy is like, I don't know, circular knob, base, circular knob, base box. If you want, it's not necessarily important. And we can either attach these so that they're the same object, or we can group them. I'll show you both methods. So let's take everything that is just the base and not that arm, and let's say group, create a group and call it base. Now let's select everything else with Edit, select Invert, and let's make that into a group as well. So that's going to be joint 1. So now you see over here, this is our hierarchy. So here's our 2 groups. Base has these things in it, and you can select them individually by clicking. And joint also has these things. And you can't, my bad, you can't select them individually by clicking unless you open the group. So we're going to go to Group, Open, and now you can take individual things. So let's go to Group, Close, and let's make sure that it rotates properly. So if this whole thing is selected, this is where it wants to rotate from. So let's go to our hierarchy, Effect Pivot Only, and let's move this guy down to here. So unselect Effect Pivot Only, and now it rotates around its base like it would. Let's go to Group, Open, and let's take everything here except for our group. Our group is visualized by this pink box. And let's make sure that we're also selecting these little tiny objects we have up here. So everything above the waist. Group, make that a second joint. And now when we select everything that was above the waist, again, our pivot point's in the center, so if we rotate that, we're going to get funky results. So let's go to Effect Pivot Only. And with this selected, I can go to my Align, and I can align it to that circle there. Say OK. Let's actually go back. So I do want to align it to the circle, but I don't want it to align it over here. So I'm going to deselect until I figure out. So our Z is the one we wanted to deselect. So it's going to be in the center. Right there. That's correct. Let's turn off Effect Pivot Only. And now when we rotate our group, it'll move properly. Let's open up our group. So now we've got a group. Oh, I just closed it on accident. Let's open, select the top, open again. So now you see in our hierarchy, we've got a group within a group. So this is our secondary one. Let's attach these to show you a different way. So we're going to go to Modify, and this is a poly object, so we can do that. We're going to select Attach, and we're going to attach this box and all of our little lights. So now these are all one object. Let's go to Left Viewport. We're going to have this object selected, and we're going to take our pivot and we're going to move it to the center of this knob, which, if we want to be precise about it, we'll probably want to align it. You see it jumped off to the side here. It's probably because Z isn't selected. Okay. It's given some weird results. I'm just going to snap it instead. So let's hit Snap, grab our X, snap it to that, grab our Y, snap it to this, turn off snaps, turn off Effect Pivot Only, and now this guy moves. If you don't like having these boxes, you can do the same attaching methods. You can delete the groups by selecting the pink squares, hit delete, and now I'm going to, for simplicity, say hide selection, grab everything above the waist, and this is still going to be a line, but so you can't attach things from the line, and this is a mirror. So if we want to turn this into poly objects, we have to right-click on Mirror, say Collapse All, so that'll flatten it. So now before it was one object mirrored over, now it's just one object with two elements in it. So we're going to say Attach, and attach the line, and that'll convert that line to a poly object, and we're also going to convert this line. It doesn't change rotation. And now that's one object. The downfall to that, let's unhide all, is that this is no longer controlling that. So having groups nested in groups would have created a joint chain structure, whereas just attaching objects isn't necessarily. To make it clean, you can attach all the objects. Let's say we converted this and then attached everything below the waist to it, just to show you what I'm talking about. So these are our joint chains. We could select all three objects, make it a group, one, open, select these two objects, make it a group, open, and then this last object is its own. So now, if we close everything, then of course our pivots aren't set, so we'd have to redo that, but the joint chain structure should remain the same because we're working in group clusters.